Right. Well, welcome back, everyone. And really good session last time with this group. Lots of wonderful discussion. Really, I suppose it was a little bit of a sort of philosophical discussion about road safety and trauma to our community and starting to think about, well, across the different levers, what can we change? How can we improve things? We now start to delve a bit more into the road environment, road infrastructure, and start working on those characteristics of road design, management, and operation that have real impacts on road safety outcomes, but also, that safe system alignment. So we have hit the record button. So that's if anybody misses a session or wants to recap something, go back. And Marissa at the end will show you in the learning management system where you can see that. And we are also going to give you an assignment.
Yeah. And Ken, are we counting Wally's today?
Yes, we are.
Counting good. Wally. All right. Don't forget your Wally's, everyone.
Yeah. Good point. Don't forget Wally. Okay, as usual, Marissa monitoring the chat behind the scenes. Pop your questions in as we go. I will be getting you to do some little activities fairly early on, and we'll tick through a fair bit. This session, we're going to just dig further into that kinetic energy thresholds and kinetic energy management for intersections, and we're going to look at, okay, well, what can we alter in intersections to improve safe system alignment? And then we'll do the same for mid-blocks. And mid-block is just basically anything between intersections, the rest of the road network. So if we have a look immediately at intersections, I think everybody intuitively is going to know that there's risk of crash at intersection, and that's fairly obvious. And you can see a picture there of vehicle-to-vehicle crash at an intersection. That's what people think about usually when they think intersection crash. But I want to flag that there's a lot more going on at intersections in terms of risk than just the vehicle-to-vehicle crash. So we do see increased risk of runoff road crashes, so vehicles leaving the road at intersections. And this is predominantly because they are avoiding something that's happened. So another vehicle has pulled out, or a pedestrian is, crossing there, or something's happened, and they are alert and they avoid that initial crash, but it results in them leaving the road. And also associated with that, intersections tend to be a point on the road network where there is a lot of fixed hazards, a lot of fixed point source hazards. So we might have things like signal pedestals. We might have culverts. We might have power poles, because you need to take the power line that's running along one road and turn it so it goes down the other, where you need a pole there. I talked about culverts, where you need to get the water that's traveling along needs to go under a road, essentially. So what happens is we've got an increased chance that a crash will happen, and then we've put in place things that make it more severe when it does happen. So if you look along a route and you take a risk profile along the route, so we'll make this chainage. So chainage is like length along a road, and we'll do risk here. We'll see that, risk bubbles along and then spikes. And, so there's inherent mid-block risk down here. But then at each intersection, we just see this spike in risk. And the risk is of crashes like this, but also crashes involving leaving the road, hitting objects, in the fact that pedestrians have to cross, cyclists are subject to turning, traffic, and all sorts of other challenges. So intersections become this really interesting point in the road network. And Monash University Accident Research Centre a while back sort of came up with some high-level principles on the management of intersections on the road network to align highly with safe system principles. And the first ones to see there, fewer vehicles and fewer intersections. Very interesting starting point, isn't it? Like to think, oh, well, The way we make intersections safer is to get rid of them and get less people traveling through them. Both of those influence the exposure to crashes. So we talked about right at the end of last session, exposure to crashes, likelihood of crashes, and severity of crashes. And we're going to continue working on that throughout this module. And then your little assignment that you're going to be given after this is associated with digging into what influences exposure, what influences likelihood, and what influences severity. Fewer conflict points per intersection, that influences the likelihood of intersection crashes. The less points you can crash at, the less chance there are crashes. And then we get into all of these things that influence the outcome, the severity of crashes. And that's the angle of crashes, the speed of crashes, and the vulnerability of road users involved in crashes. And we go back to our sort of safe system threshold speeds for different crash types to understand what speed should we be managing intersections at, what angles should we be having conflict points at to lessen the risk. So I think probably the easiest way to do this is through some real world examples, some case studies, us analyzing some intersections and looking at what is influencing risk and what ways we can alter this and manage it. So I'm going to jump off this slide now. I think simplifying some of those speeds and angles, we can use this sort of information to say, well, 50 kilometers per hour for 90-degree vehicle-to-vehicle crashes. So crashes. This is car-to-car stuff. Okay. If we get more speed on it, we have to improve the angle. So what I mean by that is if you can crash like that, about 50 kilometers an hour, bullet vehicle speed, if you can improve the angle, you sort of bounce off a little bit. You push energy into the environment. So you remember this from year 11 vectors, probably, physics. That angle crash pushes energy into the environment a bit. So we can get a bit more speed of that crash happening. 70 for head-on and rear end. But do remember this is delta V. So, you can have vehicles crashing here like this with these sorts of angles. And we know that, one of them could be going 150 and one could be going 170. And we've only got a 20 kilometer per hour delta V there. Okay. So the initial hit and the transfer of energy is well within tolerable limits of any sort of configuration that they hit. Of course, traveling at those speeds and then leaving the road, possibly, then we're way out of the territory of survivable energy. But for the initial crash, at least, that's certainly within energy transfer survivability. So as Safe System assesses, we can sort of estimate angles crashes will happen and speeds, and that's what we're assigned to do. You don't need to be this precise, but certainly like anybody who's in CAD can easily do this. But when we can just say, okay, we've got a vehicle that's coming out here and we've got a vehicle that's coming down here. I'll change the color of this just so it's a bit easier to see. Vehicle coming down here. We've got a vehicle coming out here. Okay, that's kind of about a right angle, isn't it? So that's probably, okay, officially it looks like it's 104. But it's close enough to a right angle. We know that it's about a 50 kilometer per hour crash is about our limit for passenger vehicles. Over the other side here, okay, well, we've got much more angle on this. So maybe that one could be more like a 60 kilometer per hour crash. So you can see we're taking angles of crashes. We're taking the road users involved, vehicles, and we've related that to a threshold speed, a speed that we can't really do it beyond before like becoming much higher risk to road users. Another thing to always remember, as we talked about there, is vehicles clipping other vehicles, avoiding vehicles leaving the road, crashing around intersections and the hazards. Secondary crashes, we'll often call these, where the initial crash may not actually cause the damage. It's hitting those power poles and trees and things around the intersection that causes the other impact. The Centre for Automotive Safety Research did a big study on this, and they looked at intersections and they looked at where secondary crashes had caused death and serious injury, plotted those onto the one axis, and we see there that you've got vehicle coming in an intersection. They replotted them all onto the one axis, and that's where our secondary crash impacts are likely to happen. Kind of obvious, isn't it? Did they need to do a big study on it? Probably not, but nonetheless, that information is there. Marissa, questions before I give them a little exercise to do?
Yeah, we do have a question. Is mid-block accident likelihood increasing, Ken, with numerous high-speed crashes being reported in recent times through suburb racing and pedestrian deaths?
It's a good question. I can't hand on heart say yes or no. It's increasing, it's decreasing. It certainly persists as, run-off road crashes with death or serious injury as a result is a very high proportion, especially in country areas. Urban areas certainly have it as well. We see different things hitting the media headlines, which influence our thoughts on that. Most jurisdictions put out fairly comprehensive death and serious injury analysis reports. They usually lag by about 3 years at least in terms of them getting their data together and analysing it and putting it together, and then 16 layers of ministers and chief executives all reviewing it with their media people before they release it. But nonetheless, you can sort of see and track that for your jurisdiction. It's usually publicly available, so I can't answer that one definitively, but good question.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay. Let's talk about an exercise now for you to do. And I think I'll combine this with a little bit of a time for you to have a stretch, even though it's very early in the session and very coffee. But I'm going to get you to do something here. I'm going to give you an intersection. Here's the intersection in question. And I'll first of all describe to you what we're seeing here, and then I'll give you a little task associated with this intersection. But what do we got here? So we've got residential area. This is a shared user path down here. This road, the main road, is a 70 km/h arterial road. It's got 22,000 vehicles a day. It's got a decent percentage of heavy vehicles, 12% heavy vehicles. 12% heavy vehicles, 22,000 vehicles a day, 70 km/h speed limit, 2 lanes in each direction, as you can see. The side road here is a 50 km/h speed limit. It's got 2,000 vehicles a day, about, mainly urban collector style road. There is a school that exists up the road here, about 400 meters. These are service roads. They're two-way service roads. They have access points further down. They're just providing access to those properties, essentially. What else can I tell you about this? That's a bus stop. This is a bus route. This is a B-double route. That is a drain culvert, so water would go in there and out there. It looks big. It's not. It's probably about 1 meter and a bit high. Up the road here, about 400 meters, you got a set of traffic signals, maybe a bit less than that. Down the road, about 1 kilometer and a bit, there's a set of traffic signals. I'll jump in and show you it from a sort of street perspective. And you can see here, there, we've got the bus stop over here that we were looking at. We've got that side road. We've got those service roads there. See vehicles coming in each direction. I'll jump over to the other side of the intersection. We'll look back at it. You can see there, there's that drain culvert thing. That's that sort of area where it would flow out into. Side road, there's shared user paths over there. So your job here is to eliminate death and serious injury on at this intersection. Now, I'm going to budget constrain you. I'll give you an extra $1 million. You're going to have $4 million. I've got my Teams thing happening again. You got $4 million. You can't close the intersection. So vehicles need to be able to come out and turn left and turn right, and they need to be able to turn in from both directions. You're also operating in the current political organizational framework in which you're currently in. So just think about if you get some if you've got some really wild ideas, how are you going to navigate them through actually getting approved and actually seeing them on the ground? But the big thing I want you to be doing is for every idea you come up with, having a go at categorizing them to say, is that influencing exposure to crashes or likelihood of crashes or severity of crashes or a combination? Now, some of you probably don't have any idea what infrastructure costs or what other initiatives cost. So I'll be your instant cost estimator tool. So if you have an idea and you go, oh, I wonder how much that would cost, you just put the word cost with a question mark into the chat and then say what you are thinking about, and I will tell you how much it costs. So you could say grade separation, so like a flyover overpass, and I would say $47 million, and so well outside your budget. What's the cost of traffic signals? The cost of traffic signals would be $3.1 million. So I'm going to give you some time to have a think about this. So in the chat, you're going to be saying what you would do, listing, okay, I'd like to do this and this and this and this. But for each one of those things, I want you to put a little E or an L or an S after it. So, for example, if you wanted to improve the lighting, for example, say, improve street lighting, and then you'd put in brackets L, because lighting can only improve the chance of a crash. It does nothing for the severity of a crash. It does nothing for the exposure to crashes. Same number of vehicles, so exposed to that, same speeds and things. It's just people are a bit better at seeing things and understanding there's an intersection coming up. Can the access roads be closed? Oh, the service roads? Yeah, sure. You can do that if you want. So crash history. Yes, there are some crashes at this location, and they are vehicle-to-vehicle crashes, and they involve 6 crashes that have been, 5 of them are serious. One was an other injury, but vehicles turning in and being struck by vehicles coming through here, and vehicles turning out and being struck by vehicles have all been vehicle-to-vehicle crashes. So remember, I want to know exposure or likelihood or severity. Now, there's another cost questions come in. How much for a roundabout? Okay, a roundabout to conform with Austroads Guide to Road Design Part 4B roundabouts will cost you $9.7 million. So you can't afford it within your budget. for a full-size roundabout. That's because we have to basically we have to acquire some land, we have to move services, and there's big pavement. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do this. Have a think about it, but really critical. What is it going to influence? Exposure or likelihood or severity? And yeah, put your cost questions coming in. I think I've covered the ones that have been immediately asked there. I'll give you a minute to have a think about it. I'm not sure if that one that's got a question mark at acceleration lane from 50 to 70 is asking the cost of that. If it is a cost question, that'll cost you $2.9 million, because you have to do some widening associated with that, and there's some other configuration changes. So it's a fairly hefty civil infrastructure project. Okay, seeing some nice ideas coming in. And what I'm liking is people are putting exposure or likelihood or severity. So that's good. The crashes occurred turning right in and turning right out, both struck by vehicles coming through this way. Cost of extending the median strip after pulling out the culvert. Not sure exactly what your scope is there, but I'll go with 500,000. So remember, we can't close the intersection off. People need to be able to come in and come out. I like the fact that some people are persisting on trying to close this intersection. I think it's a very good thing to always, as a starting point, ask. Give you one more minute. Have a stretch if you've already put your answers in and you're happy. Cost of barrier. If barrier is part of another job, we'll go with $150 a meter. And if it's on its own, we'll go with $300 a meter. So, or maybe $400 a meter on a small job like this. So, I don't know. You want to put barrier all around the place, allow yourself 50 grand maybe. The cost of sort of, making left in, left out with U-turn spots in a very, reasonable distance away. That is your whole budget. That's 4 million, because of the width of this and the storage required and widening and all sorts of other challenges. Okay, wonderful stuff coming in. I am going to now going to run through a few of the answers that have come in. I won't get to everyone's, and because I see there's quite a number have got similar ideas, which is good. And what I'm really interested in is ensuring we get our head around exposure, likelihood, and severity. So let's go. And where am I going to start? Okay. So we had traffic signals. People immediately, quite a few people sort of gravitated towards signalizing this intersection. I think some of you have, been around and managing road networks and the like for a while, and you can sort of immediately see some of the things, the unbalanced flow, so lower volume and higher volume, which usually, signals if you're needing to control things, comes out as something you tend to like to do. And then there's a bit of inconsistency across this group on, does traffic signals influence exposure or likelihood or severity or some combination? Well, the way we need to think about it is that traffic signals don't alter the number of vehicles, the number of pedestrians, and the number of cyclists going through this intersection, okay? Yes, there's probably some situations where if you did some traffic modeling, you discover there's a little bit more because they maybe use this intersection now, or there's a little less because they avoid this intersection, whatever it is. In the scheme of a safe system assessment, that usually that's not big enough changes to actually change your exposure to crashes. Because exposure, I want you to think about exposure, is just numbers, right? How many vehicles, how many people, how many cyclists? So by putting signals there, have we fundamentally changed how many go through there? No. Have we influenced the likelihood of crashes by putting signals there? Is it less likely that we'll see crashes? Yes, because we're controlling it. We're telling people when to go and when to stop. Okay. Severity. Are we influencing the severity of crashes? Well, in safe system assessment thinking, we answer that with a no. We're not influencing the severity of crashes. Okay, yes, there will be crash scenarios where people are braking because the lights are there, but then they enter into the intersection slower, and so there's some sort of crash at low severity. But there is very easy possibility for there to be high-speed crashes still, people running red lights, missing the lights, pushing to go through the last bit of orange and crashing. So the speeds are still high. The angles are just the same of crash. So the severity outcomes are the same for some of those crashes, if not higher. So we talk about signals just influencing the likelihood of crashes. A couple of people come up with seagull intersections as a form, and that's an interesting one. So for those who don't know what a seagull intersection is, that would be to create some sort of acceleration lane in the median. So a vehicle would sort of come out here, have an acceleration, and then try to merge from the right. So seagulls are fascinating because part of me says, okay, so now we're getting vehicles to crash like that. That's a better angle. I like that angle of crash. But I do also go, hang on a second, we've still got this crash, which is very severe, exactly the same bullet vehicle speed. We've got the one coming in that we can crash with. So are we addressing that? Probably not. Okay, maybe if we signalize the whole thing, that'll be better and we get some better, but we've still got that very harsh crash angle. Also, merge from the right it increases the likelihood of crash. That's a very hard merge to do. Certainly, we know a lot of older people really struggle to turn their head like that. We also know articulated trucks, so a truck with a cabin or the like, or carrying a container or the like, that they can't look through it. So they're fully reliant on their mirror and how that plays out and their acceleration. So the New Zealanders did a really interesting bit of work on seagull intersections. There's a seagull intersection safety assessment tool they created. So you can plug in lots of variables and see the relative risk of a seagull intersection at your location. It's an interesting one. Okay, let's keep looking through. So slip lane, acceleration lane. So getting vehicles to accelerate up here before they come in, and that's got some advantages in delta V and the angle of crash at that location. So that's good. We're still going to have problems with the vehicle coming out and the vehicle coming in, and we've got that high severity, high speed crash still available there. Yep. So just reading through a few here. We've got some people who want to do that left in, left out, and they're really determined to do that. I sort of was trying to say we can't close this, but I like the idea and I like the pushing, because fundamentally, if we could close this whole intersection, divert vehicles around to an existing, very safe intersection, that's a far better outcome. Or if we could close this off and then just have vehicles going left out of here and left into here. Okay, we've got really friendly crash types, or friendlier crash types because of the angles. And then you would have to, yes, create some sort of U-turn facility. So a vehicle come out here, merge over time, turn, merge back in and accelerate. So that would be good. I would call that lessening the likelihood of crashes as opposed to the exposure of crashes, just for the sheer fact that we still have the same amount of vehicles doing the same thing. And within the general envelope of the area here, they are still exposed to crashes, different sort of crash angles and those sort of things. So it reduces the likelihood of crashes. I mean, I think probably if you got your traffic modeling done, you'd find that altered the number of vehicles sort of trying to make these turns a bit. So, but yeah. Okay. So we've got a username in here, Crockerell. Maybe that's the surname. That I'm going to give a prize there, Marissa, because we've got quite a bit of detail on this one and some good ideas and reasonably good in terms of the categorization. Could do a little improvement. So talking about a mini roundabout. Now I like this because I said a full-size roundabout would cost you a lot. What about a smaller roundabout? Good thing to think about. And that would actually influence the severity of crashes. We would still say that we're going to get the same exposure because the same number of vehicles and pedestrians and cyclists going through. We're going to get the likelihood is a real interesting one because it just changes the types of crashes that are going to happen. You'll get more rear ends, you'll get more sideswipe crashes, and but the severity is going to be much, much lower. And then some associated works, speed zone reviews and the like. I'm just jumping through here, and apologies if I jump past. I'm looking for something for things a bit different out of there. So one-waying the service roads, okay, that just would influence the likelihood of crash. Okay, people may say, oh no, there'll be less vehicles now. Well, again, I don't like in a safe system assessment to make very firm predictions on alterations in patterns and the like. You're just less likely to crash if it's that consistent way to go. Mind you, I don't think alterations to the service roads in this scenario will have a lot of impact on safe system alignment. Great group. Okay. I think most of them I'm sort of going to talk to in one way or another as I tick through a few slides. But thank you. I really like the fact that people are having a good crack at that definition of exposure and likelihood and severity. And what I want to do is make sure I talk to this intersection and intersections in general and really be talking about exposure and likelihood and severity. So let's unpack that signalization that a lot of people wanted to do. And as I said, you'll see this little checkbox appear a lot of the time. Signals influence the likelihood of crashes. And we know that if you take an intersection like that, which is controlled by a give way sign and people are making their own choice when they go in and out, from thousands and thousands of intersections across the world that have gone from something like that or a stop sign or the like to having traffic signals, it reduces crashes by about 45%. Okay. So that's pretty good. 45% reduction. We call that a crash reduction factor, or if you inverse it, it's a crash modification factor. So 45% crash reduction factor. And that's by reducing the chance that a crash will happen. But if we take that and we say, well, okay, let's look at how traffic signals perform from death and serious injury to our community, it is not a good thing to look at. I mean, it's good to look at and to learn from. It is not a good result. I just have heat mapped, and I've done this for a lot of cities around Australia. And it's a very quick exercise. You simply get all your death and serious injury, you plonk it into a map, and you just heat map it. And what you'll discover is your outer, or any metropolitan location, basically, all the death and serious injury we're seeing as hotspots are signalized intersections. So traffic signals, they reduce, signalized, they reduce death and serious injury, but by no means are they safe. And in fact, if you filter your, in your city or your state or your region, top 10 intersections, no, top 100 intersections for death and serious injury, the overwhelming majority are going to be signalized intersections. And the reason for that is well, partly the exposure. Yes, we have lots of vehicles and we have lots of pedestrians crossing and we have lots of cyclists and we have these conflict points. Okay, so there's lots of exposure, right? And we've done some job in reducing the likelihood of crashes, but people are people and they make mistakes and they run through red lights and they miss the lights and they misjudge the lights and they try to beat the lights and then they're hooning through whatever, you know, there's so many reasons. And we are left with high severity, bad angle incidents occurring. And it is an absolute sort of classic fundamental of safe system where we see everybody saying, well, they ran the red light. All right. This is not, we're not seeing this death and serious injury because the signals are malfunctioning, right? But this is people making mistakes. And for us to just blame them, build another set of signals, expecting somehow this one's going to operate differently, well, this is just ridiculousness. All right. Professor Jeremy Woolley at the Centre for Automotive Safety Research doing a review of the National Road Safety Strategy, and I can't remember exactly how it came up, but he said, yeah, traffic signals are the biggest failure of traffic engineers. I was like, wow, it's such a great inflammatory statement. But his statement on that from a road safety perspective was around the fact that people think putting a set of traffic signals in is some ultimate safety form. Once we get to signals, we've done everything we can. All right, they need to start behaving. Okay. Yeah, we need to change that attitude. I like the fact that people are looking at roundabouts. Okay, yeah, there's some practical challenges with it, but the reason I like that is because roundabouts actually align very well with safe system principles, because they are addressing the severity of crashes. And they address that through a number of ways, predominantly through the fact that everybody slows down approaching them. So when the crashes happen between passenger vehicles, they're very low severity. Now, I've got a whole module coming up on pedestrians and cyclists at roundabouts and the like. So there are particular challenges there, but roundabouts perform just amazingly well for passenger vehicles. And I said signals were about 45%. But for passenger vehicles, we see above 85% reduction in death or serious injury for passenger vehicles at a one-lane roundabout. They virtually eliminate death and serious injury. Okay, there's some exceptions and things we probably still need to work on, but a very amazing road safety feature. But why do they need to be so big? Okay, we need to be so big so a large vehicle can get around it, basically. A large vehicle has this swept path and, needs to be able to turn. And yeah, sometimes we want to do deflection on the approach to the roundabout as well. Somebody suggested a mini roundabout or a compact roundabout, and that was an interesting idea. I mean, here's an example from the UK, obviously a very, very different road environment. However, I like to just think about the principles of this one. So you haven't had to actually alter the intersection much, if at all. Larger vehicles are just going to drive straight over that, and that's fine. People get a bit worried about sort of people driving fast through it, straight lines, running, and how's it going to perform? But the big advantage of this from a road safety perspective is disruption of ultimate priority. So what do I mean by that? If this was just a give way line here and this road ran straight through, vehicles approaching here would be going fast and not really concentrating. Vehicles going through here would be going fast and not really concentrating. And if a mistake happens, a vehicle comes out here or the like, we just got more speed, everything's happening, and less concentration from these drivers. Just by putting the roundabout in, the hold line, a little bit of Spiller Island, everybody wakes up, they look around, they slow down. This is sort of the UK equivalent of the US four-way stop. And we know there's a few four-way stops in around Australia, but it's pretty rare. But that idea that we know an intersection is a high risk location, we know that we want to activate people in the driving task at that location. I think these things sort of hold some merit and can be pretty low cost. I'll take questions in a second, Marissa. There have been great examples of where people use vertical deflection, raised platforms to slow people on the approach to some of these roundabouts they're a little bit worried about, and that even further enhances the severity reduction. So some people might say, well, hang on, why aren't we getting likelihood reduction as well, or exposure reduction? Well, exposure would only happen if you've lessened the number of vehicles or the number of pedestrians or the number of cyclists going through. And likelihood, we actually sort of change the characteristics of crashes. We get rear ends occurring and we get some sideswipe crashes that occur, but we don't see those high severity impacts. And just to sort of illustrate it in some more classic style ways, conflict point diagram. So each dot here presents a way that a passenger vehicle can crash with another passenger vehicle or heavy vehicle, road traffic crashes. Haven't included pedestrians or cyclists at this stage. As I talked about, we'll do that in detail next module. Here's a set of traffic signals. Lots more ways that you can crash and lots more severe ways that you can crash. The angles that these happen at are better. That's in those severe crash angles. This is bad angle. This is good angle to crash. And this last one, I mean, people drive and walk and ride around the road network in all states of consciousness to a degree, driving is the one where they're most tuned out. They are most, they're thinking about the fight they had with their partner, or they've worked a double shift and then they're driving to their brother's wedding. They're had a few beers, or they're distracted by things, or there's so many states of consciousness of driving. Now, there's a lot of good people doing a lot of work to try to better this, but there is a huge amount of driving that is just not with it. And you've probably done that yourself. You've probably gone, oh, I don't remember the last 5 minutes of driving. Like, how did I get here? Oh, that's scary. Yeah, I mean, and you're not a bad person. You're just a human, and these things happen. So yeah, we do have multi levels of why people are not highly attuned and engaged in the driving task at 100% of the time. And so a roundabout or some physical infrastructure in the middle of the road actually activates the driver in the task of driving at that particular point in time. They look around, they concentrate, they slow down, they're aware of that driving task at that position in time, or more aware. But a set of traffic signals is much, much more inefficient in activating the driver in the driving task. And we see them drive straight through signals. As I talked about, sometimes it's more intentional, but sometimes it's absolutely not. And they've just missed it. They just missed the signals. I didn't see it. I just drove through it. Okay. And they're going at speed, and the angles that crashes could happen are bad. So I'll leave that there. Oh, there's a Wally. I think a few Wallies might have been there, but being nice and helping.
Counted a few. I've counted a few.
Counted a few. Let's deal with some questions. I think I've probably chucked a few things out there that people want to ask questions about.
Quite a few questions on the roundabouts. Are there strict guidelines on how roundabouts can be built?
Okay, so there is certainly a lot of design guidance and information associated with roundabouts and how you build them and what is appropriate and not appropriate. So the Austra's Guide to Road Design Part 4B is a whole guide on roundabouts and how to design them and all those challenges. I certainly have been challenging a lot of that. And so my team at Safe Systems Solutions, we wrote the Victorian guidelines on compact roundabouts, which is to say, can we challenge some of this traditional, why do we have to pay $9 million, $10 million for a roundabout? So sometimes $15 million for a roundabout, when we can make some alterations and get it in at 4 million, 3 million, 2 million, sometimes not 2 million is a stretch, 3 million. But, like we could really get huge amounts and get the same safety outcome, essentially. They do take some changes in our traditional design approaches, but have a look at that Austroads guide. Of course, all Austroads guides are free. You just need your login to Austroads, which you can create, and then freely download that guide. And happy to chat further about, specifics of roundabout design.
Great, thanks. Whatever happened in the design to roundabouts with the lead and reduction curve? These seem to have disappeared in recent designs. Yeah,
so what we're talking about there is reverse curves on the approach to a roundabout or the like, which is essentially sort of if you have a high-speed road and it comes in and you've got a roundabout, people can come in very fast. But the idea is that if you sort of chicane them in, right, they have to slow down on these curves. Now, that jurisdictional design practice sort of differs a bit on that. Certainly, a high-speed roundabout in Victoria will have reverse curves. Now, in Victoria, you would never speed limit reduction around a roundabout. So you let the geometry of the road, the curve, slow people down. They slow down naturally by navigating that geometry. In some jurisdictions, they will speed limit a roundabout, and that sometimes lessens their thoughts in the need for as much reverse curve and slowing of the vehicle through geometric design. I'm personally not the biggest fan of that, but that's sort of a bit of what's going on.
Great. Okay, we've got another few. Mini roundabouts. If a truck or larger vehicle can drive over the roundabout, would that mean the driver of the larger vehicle would not slow down?
To a degree, I mean, most heavy vehicle drivers are in their turn movements take them fairly slow in order to not tip their vehicle. And we've got to be careful with geometric design in intersections to ensure that vehicles aren't tipping and understand exactly how to do that. So, yeah, it's something to consider as you go. I think, yeah, probably it gets self-regulated a bit in one sense.
Right. How do roundabouts compare to signals from a pedestrian and cyclist safety perspective?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we got a couple of we got modules coming up on pedestrians and cyclists and at roundabouts and how that works. I mean, really what we see is cyclists have a higher risk of being killed and seriously injured at roundabouts than they do in some other intersection forms. Pedestrians sort of don't, but it's all wacky in terms of the data. Like roundabouts are so prohibitive to people walking and crossing that the exposure is lower. And so a lot of the studies have not accounted properly for the change in number of people who are actually using these areas and these intersections when walking. You know, you can't deny that we get speeds down at roundabouts, which is going to be a good thing for everybody. But some of that complication for other road users really needs to be addressed. And I'll give you some good ways to address that in the next module.
Okay, great. And we've just got someone pop in that they're just wanting a bit more of an explanation on reverse curves.
Okay, so you've got a road going straight into an intersection. And you want to put a roundabout there. We just get worried that people will be approaching this too fast. So we actually put these curves in the road back here. And it's what we would call a reverse curve. It goes one way and then the other. All right. And you do it with the whole road. So then your carriageway comes in like that. So the idea is that you get the driver to slow down to go around these, and then they get to the roundabout going slower.
Great. There's another couple of questions coming in. Did you want them now, Ken, or did you want to?
No,
Yeah.
sure. Let's keep going.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going. What would you have done, Ken, at the example intersection?
Good question. I will show you what was done, and I'll tell you when we get to it, some extra things I probably would have done. I was involved to a little degree in it. I've been involved in some other ones very similar.
All right. Question from Julius. Why are four-way stop intersections in Australia compared to the US? Wouldn't having vehicles forced to stop at an intersection and having to look left or right increase the alertness of drivers when negotiating through it?
Absolutely. I think four-way stops should be deployed heavily. They are low cost. They bring everybody to exactly as was said. They give that person a prize for that. It makes absolute sense. Because it's not done, I think what would be easier would be mini roundabouts, really just very mini little roundabouts that you don't have to change much and can be completely driven over, just to still give that same disruption a priority, just because Australians are more used to roundabouts and happier with that.
Adam is asking about turbo roundabouts.
Well, I'm about to have a chat about turbo roundabouts, so I'll get to that.
Okay, all right. With reverse curves in built-up areas, how does this work? Would you need to access private land in these cases, or does it inhibit cost?
Yeah, so you only really use reverse curves when you have high speed areas. So in urban areas, you don't use reverse curves often because the approach speeds are low enough that you can just use the roundabout itself to get that little extra bit of speed reduction. And
Okay.
yeah, you'd be acquiring significant land. Okay, let's talk about turbo roundabouts. So it was more just showing that, there's lots and lots associated with roundabouts. Single lane roundabouts perform really well. Speed is very good proxy for risk, usually. Double lane roundabouts start to get problematic when they're small roundabouts, and you see high speeds through them. People taking straight lines and really going fast. Turbo roundabouts are a 2-lane roundabout, but you can essentially get safety performance back to a 1-lane roundabout. So here's a turbo roundabout. So what it has is a raised concrete separator on the approach and through and out. So if you want to turn right, you sort of come in here, you go around there, and then out you go. It's like a channelized roundabout, essentially. Let me show you another one. Here's another good one. You can see there that the vehicles come in and they slow down and they keep to their lane and they can't take a fast straight line through it. And it's good. And look at this wonderful little interaction happening. Here we've got a truck that looks like they've entered the intersection inappropriately, as in not at the right time. There's a vehicle there. We've got a vehicle here that's coming up there. We know that's going to be okay, don't we? Like that vehicle cannot be going very fast because this is a very radial roundabout, which is another different thing I don't have time to talk too much about. But they've sort of come in there and then they will be going very slow. Also, look at that angle. Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? Like if that vehicle does hit it, the energy they'll sort of bounce off a bit. It's low speed, it's good angles, mistake is happening, and it's likely to be, at worst, a fender bender. They'll probably avoid that crash altogether. Here's an exciting turbo roundabout, isn't it? Now, I put this up because, it's awesome. And I don't think it would be as mind-blowing when you're on the ground and you're just navigating through it. It is signalized. This is in the Netherlands, but the reason I put it up there is to just talk to you about the philosophy people use around the world and the differences. We had a Dutch engineer that we had brought out to delve into cyclists around about actually, and design and how we can do better catering for that. And I showed this to the Dutch engineer and said, this is just fascinating. Like, look at the land area on it and the complexity of it and all these sorts of things. And he sort of asked, well, what would you do in a here? And I said, we had a bit of a chat about the volumes and speeds and things. I said, it'd probably be a large signalized intersection running at 70 kilometers an hour on both legs with sort of 3 lanes in each direction. And he was just like, what? But what about all the death and serious? How can you leave that much energy for the individual driver and mistakes? He was just gobsmacked. And, the idea that you would possibly have that speed and all that you're relying on is somebody stopping at a red light to prevent death and serious injury. The Dutch, in the philosophy perspective, would just say, no way, we'll do something like this before we'd ever let that happen. So it was a more philosophical sort of thing and plus awesomeness. But it's interesting to see there's a lot more people pushing Australian and New Zealand intersections to say, big signalized intersections still seem to be pretty important in terms of managing traffic and moving people around and being able to control things with signal optimization and all sorts of, fun stuff. But are there characteristics we could implement that would reduce people's speed through the roundabout, change the angle, wake people up? So this is like a concept. This is not actually built anywhere, but I like the fact that people are now starting to question that big intersection, 2-3 lanes, high speed. I mean, they are just catastrophic for the health and safety of our community. Now, one thing that didn't come up a lot, although I did see a couple of people starting to, dip their toe in the water if their thoughts was around, well, could we actually can we raise the intersection a bit that we had as our little example intersection? Could we do some little raised platforms? Not really maybe like an urban speed hump like you see in your back streets or your residential streets, but maybe something just to make them go a bit slower. And that's what the region proposed for that intersection you were looking at. And they said, well, we know of our top 100 intersections in our region, like 60% of them are for death and serious injury or signalized intersections. Are we really prepared to just build another one and hope for some miracle this one will perform better than all the others? And they go, then they talked about, well, could we put more, more mast arms, more lights? Could we do other things to try to make sure people actually stop at the red light? And they said, well, could we actually say, what could we do about the severity of incidents that are going to happen? So they said, let's maybe just try to make vehicles coming up on the main road slow down just as they go through this intersection. They didn't care so much about the vehicle turning in or the vehicle turning out because they're not the bullet vehicle. They're not the ones that have the speed to do the damage. They're going too slow to do the damage in that turn. These ones were traveling at 70 kilometers an hour, 75 kilometers an hour, sometimes pushing a little bit, 80 kilometers an hour, all right? That's where your energy is. That's where your death happens from. Okay, so just calming them through this point we know is higher risk, much higher risk. The signals will reduce the likelihood and slowing them will reduce the severity. And that's what they ended up building, right? Show you a few photos of that. There's a couple of points I want to make, and then I'll address some of those things that came up. So first of all, I was out there with a colleague doing the post-opening road safety audit of it, and we'd done some audits earlier on. But I took this photo, and I just love this photo because we've got a green light, lots of green lights, but we've got the vehicle slowing down. Now, my traffic operations friends, and I showed them this photo, and they're like, oh, it's so inefficient. I hate it. Like, why are we slowing all these vehicles down for the 1 in 500,000 or 1 in a million chance that something's going to go wrong? And I'm like, are you kidding me? If we put a roundabout in there, everybody would slow down and you wouldn't have an issue with that, would you? Like, if this is just because it's out slightly different. It's something we haven't done in the past, but we need to change what we've done because it's not working. I mean, it works to a degree, 45%, but we need it to get to 95, 100%. Well, I think to get to 100%, we might have to do a little bit more, but, we can do huge benefits here. The other things I want to point out is that you have this big advantage that the infrastructure itself is slowing the vehicles down. They slow down on the approach to this to navigate over it. And you give them an advisory speed. This is not a regulatory speed limit reduction. And that comes with lots of benefits because people get all narky about speed limit reductions and it gets political and all these things. But people are more than happy to slow down. They just want to make their choices when they do it. And if you make them navigate it, they slow down. It works beautifully. So that's another wonderful little benefit. Why did they pick 50 kilometers an hour as advisory speed? And that was based on the ramp angles. So, the sharper you make the ramp, the more you would get people to slow down. Anybody got an idea of why 50 was chosen? And Marissa, you're going to have to look for any questions that disappear as a result of what's about to come in. Michael, well done. Human tolerance to physical force. They are designing this, slowing vehicles to 50, because if this vehicle comes out and this one strikes it at 50, it's just within our tolerance to physical force threshold for that crash type. It's a right angle crash. That's the threshold speed. Another little awesomeness, and this is a bit, there's a term called the dilemma zone in traffic engineering. The dilemma zone is a beautifully named little phenomenon, but it's the point in time and space when a vehicle is approaching and the lights go orange and they are in a dilemma. Do I stop or do I put the foot down and go? I'm sure you found yourself in the dilemma zone before. And what happens when you have the raised intersection is that it just shrinks the dilemma zone down to next to nothing, because vehicles approaching have their foot on the brake already. They're slowing and they just stop. So, yeah, there's still a tiny dilemma zone, but it's really, it's very impressive. So this is like, there's tweaks that I would do, some improvements for pedestrians and cyclists and things in this intersection, but at a philosophy perspective and a fundamental perspective, this has high alignment with safe system principles, in the sense that we've identified that signals themselves have reliance on humans performing 100% of the time. But if we could slow them down, we can cater for mistakes because the energy is lower when these mistakes happen. Okay. I'll take questions, Marissa, if there are any, and then I'll show some more examples of a couple of raised intersections. And I better make sure I leave you enough time to give them their assignments, eh?
Yeah, there wasn't, it was just one more comment / question from Jacqueline. She noticed that they were using yellow paint for calming. She said this does not seem the norm. Was it extra safety?
Yeah, okay. The background on why they use yellow, which is weird, and it's good spotting that it's out of the norm. They just had some concerns that pedestrians might think it's a pedestrian crossing. We debated it and talked about it. They use yellow to try to lessen that. I don't think that makes it any different, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Now we'll have a short break. I was trying to work out whether that exercise counted as a break or not, but let's have a short break. And I'll, how about I leave this on the screen as a picture of a intersection which has 52,000 vehicles a day, major heavy vehicle route, major bus route, emergency services route, and actually I'll go back one. I'll do that one. And so it's just the same road. Major arterial. This side road has 27,000 at least. Raised intersection. Raised the whole intersection because it's a cross intersection. Let's take a couple of minutes and then we'll get back into it.
Thanks.
Okay, so I just want to cover a few more points here. This is has been good discussion. Just remember to take the principles I'm talking about here. It's not specifically about raised intersections, even and raised safety platforms, even though they exhibit some pretty good safety performance and pretty good alignment with safe system principles. And for those interested in design specific, there's a Victorian Road Design Note 0307. You can download with details on design of raised safety platforms on high-speed arterial roads and major arterial roads and the like. And of course, Austroads has a research report, effective effectiveness and implementation of race safety platforms. So we see Victoria's rolled out a lot of them. Well, a lot of them, I say, about 20 of them. And New Zealand's rolled out quite a number. Other jurisdictions are still pondering, looking, discussing. But I think this or something else that aligns well with safe system principles is required. Mini roundabouts or compact roundabouts were discussed. So mini roundabouts are very, very small. Compact roundabouts are just smaller than anything that Australia's Guide to Road Design Part 4B would allow. Here's an example of a compact roundabout. So this intersection, basically, that's the arterial road, had some pretty bad crash history, a lot of high-speed things going on. They wanted to build a roundabout, then they couldn't afford the $9 million or whatever it was going to cost because of this, which is a telecommunication exchange building, because of the land acquisition that they would need, big, massive swathes of land, plus reverse curves on the approach. It was just huge cost. Services all running through underneath as well. So they said, well, what about if we go something small? Go a small roundabout with a very small actual roundabout in the middle there. Like that, the roundabout is tiny. It's got then what we call a concrete apron. So the bigger circle around it is more an area that trucks can drive over. And then we'll run vehicles straight in. Like we talked about reverse curves on the approach. They said, well, we can't do reverse curves because we just have to buy up people's land in order to, start this back here and curve in there and the like. We'd have to acquire lots of their area. And so they said, what about if we did try some gentle raised platforms on the approach? And that's what was built on this one. And again, I'm not particularly saying, this is your answer, but the easy thing that they could have done, and nobody would have got angry or anything like that, would have just been to do a right turn lane and maybe some rumble strips and warning signs on the approach and left it and said, well, that'll lessen risk a bit. And they're right, it would lessen risk a bit. But to actually get us closer to that fundamental of elimination of death and serious injury in an area like this is going to come pretty close. People coming in, they slow down because they've got to navigate over this gentle ramp, and then they've got to navigate over this one, and then they've got the roundabout where everybody slows right down. So I think some of you will have interest in the design specifics of this. Our team wrote the design guide for compact roundabouts for Victorian government, which you can download and have a look at. So you can get some of the specifics on ramp grades and thinking about, well, where can you put lighting now? Because you can't put it in the central circulating carriageway or in the central island. And how do you, account for other different bits and pieces? But again, I think the principle is great, and safe system assessments help with this because they show that chucking some warning signs up or doing these sort of things doesn't actually get us a step change in death and serious injury. It might do a tiny, tiny little bit to help, but that plays out. When you safe system assess something, you're just like, well, you're going to put up warning signs and improve the line marking. You have essentially no effect on getting our safe system aspirations. I can send some information or make some information available about this. I've just written up a case study on this this roundabout as well. Yeah, there's a lot to sort of think about. But we've got a little poll, I hope, and it's just one question, and it's just to make sure you're thinking about things, I think, in the right way. Let's see, Marissa, if we do have a poll or not.
We do have a poll. We've got two, Ken. Traffic signals or true or false? The signals, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so the question that's popped up on your screen, if it's worked, is true or false? Traffic signals are not safe system. True, false, or unintelligible question, which means like, Ken, your question doesn't make sense. Ask better questions, Ken. That's an unintelligible question. So as we do that, Michael's asked a question about, so there was land acquisition and reconfiguration of that entry, fifth leg, and moving things around. Why? Well, yes, those things were considered. That the end decision was around having all of the legs the same, essentially, consistency across all those legs and like, which, yeah, you could have. There would have been an option to reverse curve on that one approach, but decision sort of made there. All right, let's end that poll. Let's display the results. And we've got a bit of a even split almost there, and that's fine because, well, unintelligible question is probably a good option there because I gave you no context. And even just talking about safe system as a binary concept is just weird. Like, things are not either safe system or not safe system. They sort of have an alignment with safe system principles. And I think we've got ourselves in a lot of trouble in the past in talking about safe system as a binary concept. And people going, oh, you can't do that. That's not safe system. And you're like, well, it kind of has bits of safe system and like, talk about safe system as a scale and what's our alignment with safe system principles. That's how you think about it. And that's what a safe system assessment does. It spits out scores, and higher scores are worse alignment with safe system principles, and lower scores are better alignment with safe system principles. So unintelligible question is probably good. False I can accept because it's not the signals alone that have their alignment with safe system principles. It's the context that they're in. Don't blame the signals. And traffic signals are fine to be used in locations where we have appropriate vehicle speeds, and just understand that some people are going to miss them and run through them. True, I'll accept also if you had a particular context in mind, which was maybe high-speed road environments or these sorts of things. So the reason I popped that poll in, though, was really I have had people come out of this course over the years who somehow thought that I was saying you can't use traffic signals or they're not safe system. And I was like, well, that wasn't the message. The message was about thinking about the context, thinking about the principles, and making sure we're adjusting our infrastructure according to understanding mistakes will happen, and that the energy when mistakes happen has to be low. Awesome. So just in your notes, if you download the PDF, I just have a few dot points in summary you can look back at any point. I want to talk a little bit about lane departure. We won't spend as long on lane departure crashes. This is people leaving the road, hitting trees, hitting power poles, hitting culverts, rolling over. I am, again, sort of focusing this module on vehicle lane departure. And we just have a massive amount of road network out there. Just hundreds of thousands of kilometers of long, straightish road. And sometimes it's curvy, but, long, straight roads. It's a big country, Australia. Bruce, do we have anyone joining us from other countries? I forget for this course. But anyway, welcome if we do. You've got a lot of road network, I'm sure, too. There's just a lot of road out there.
We do, actually. I think we have a couple participants from Nepal.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, well,
Yes.
You've got lots of windy roads too, and lots of challenges with people leaving the road and falling down cliffs and things, but also running off the road, hitting trees, hitting power poles, hitting structures. And this is the challenge we face, is that at the moment, speed of vehicle leaving the road and hitting a tree, a power pole, a culvert, and even rolling over are generally not survivable at that 100 kilometre per hour, 110 kilometre per hour speeds. We've also got the head-on crash risk, and we often separate using just a white line or two white lines. And that, at 100 kilometers an hour is also well above our tolerable threshold for energy, and we see death. And so we are not designing roads and operating roads there that are forgiving of mistakes. Because if somebody just leaves their lane for a second, and that lightning happens to strike them at that point in time and they hit another vehicle, I don't mean like actually physically lightning striking them, but the random occurrence that another vehicle's there right at that time, that's death. Or that's high-level serious injury. So it is not a forgiving road system. And I talked about that disparity of speed, energy, and side impact with a pole. We talked about the 29 kilometer per hour side impact crash. It's gone up to 32 recently, but that's essentially what vehicle sides are designed for, striking trees, power poles, and the like. Yet we see that happening at 100 kilometers an hour, 110, and it's just unsurvivable. I mean, just to talk about the pure sort of violence and physics of it, here's a fairly graphic video of a estimated 60 kilometer per hour side impact with a pole. So yeah, let's have a look at that. Oh, sorry, I'm going to have to just change. So the energy involved in that is huge. And like these are unsurvivable energy levels on a point source hazard. So people might say, oh, well, but are cars really hitting power poles and trees and things sideways like this, or is this a freak rare incident where something? Well, a lot of vehicles hit the side of or hit trees and power poles on their side. The reason for that is as a vehicle, but here's the classic scenario, okay? Driving along out in long straight road, goes on and on and on, and people have been driving for a while and they start to fall asleep. And the camber of the road is just in a way that water drains off the road, which also means that they sort of start to drift off the road a bit. And they're drifting off, say, to the left. And they all of a sudden wake up and they're in the roadside, or they're just leaving the shoulder or the like. And at that point, they pull the wheel to try to get back on the road. And that then starts the vehicle yawing. Now, yawing is the term that we call sliding, sideways. So you've got pitch, which is the up and down of the front and back of a vehicle. You've got roll, which is the roll of it. And you've got yaw, which is that side-to-side sliding. And so it starts the vehicle yawing and then exposing the side of the vehicle, the worst energy absorbing part of the vehicle, to any hazards that are there. And then if they manage to get traction and they come back, maybe they'll double yaw, so then they'll overcorrect again and slide. So we see some real challenges associated with vehicles leaving the road. So a lot of people say then, okay, well, let's get rid of those power poles, let's get rid of those trees, let's create these cleared areas free of hazards. And there's a few reasons I'm going to say, well, we might need to rethink that. The first reason here is that we actually don't eliminate risk by creating clear zones. We lessen risk in the first little bit, and then it asymptotes out to, like, it just flattens out. You never get below about that 4.5 casualty crashes per 100 million VKT. So that's interesting. And that's because of people going just beyond that and rollover crash risk and a few other things. The other thing important to note is a lot of the time you cannot achieve clear zone requirements. You can't remove the trees because that's the last of the remnant vegetation, and you shouldn't want to remove that. Also, your native vegetation offset costs would be just huge. And then the cost of removal or power, undergrounding power or moving power or these sorts of things. So old clear zone theory, which we used to operate under, which would basically say, well, what's your volume of traffic? What's your speed? What's the curvature? Use this magic formula or magic table, and it'll say you've got a 9 meter clear zone you've got to meet. And that's a 9 meter area free of hazards, or a 12 meter area free of hazards. That has been absolutely eliminated out of the Austroads Guide to Road Design Part 6, which is roadside hazard management. And there's a new concept in there. But let me explain a little bit more about this briefly. Here's a bit of road that 3 or 4 years ago, if you followed the Austroads Guide to Road Design, here's how you would build a big bypass. Okay, maybe you would have little trees that have grown in the interim, but essentially it would be a big wide median, which would be calculated based on sort of clear zones. It'd have some sealed shoulder, and it'd have hazards at whatever the clear zone is, 9 meters, 12 meters, or whatever was decided. Probably wouldn't have truck rumble strips because that was a little trial that was happening, but probably have audio tactile edge line. Now, we've got a lot of good things here to reduce the chance of crashes. We've got a lovely geometric alignment. We've got generally a good surface. We've got those audio tactile edge line. We've got raised reflective pavement markers, so nice at night, be able to delineate the road. You've got these big areas. If you fall asleep, leave the road, hopefully you wake up and you haven't hit anything and you come back in. But nothing's happening for the severity of crashes. The vehicle driver's asleep and they run out and they hit the trees, the same speed, they stop abruptly. Vehicle gets across here to the other carriageway and hits another vehicle, the severity is high. And it's just absolutely gobsmacking that in the last, even 5 years, 3 years, we've seen billion-dollar road projects open. Not that dissimilar configuration to this. Brand new road. And within months of it opening, a vehicle leaves the road, crosses the median, and hits a vehicle coming through with a family, and everybody's killed. How on earth can you spend $1 billion on new infrastructure and then within that time, and then people go, wow, they were asleep, they fell asleep? Like, it's not the infrastructure's fault. Yes, it's the infrastructure's fault. Like, we absolutely have to create infrastructure that doesn't result in that sort of thing as the outcome when people make mistakes. Don't get me wrong, we're going to do lots to try to stop people driving fatigued, and let's continue to work hard on that. But we can do better than that. Imagine if we built a new train line, if they do this, whatever it is, the inland rail thing, and they open it up and within a few months, 5, 6 people die. I'm tipping they're going to close it down until they work out how do we make sure that doesn't happen again, as opposed to the road where they go, blame the individual. So we can do better, and more is happening. So there's part 6. Have a look at it. Lots and lots of new stuff in there. Lots of stuff to get your head around. I won't be able to go into that in detail. Essentially, like, high alignment with safe system principles has full containment of barrier systems, right? And our major roads, we just got to do that. Our big major roads have to have full containment the whole way. It's going to cost a lot, but in order for us to continue to maintain high travel speeds, we have to have this. And we go down, and then right down the bottom here, it's not good, where you're separating with a white line and you've got roadside hazards and the like. And this is where we have to alter the speed, because Or make the decision, no, that's a major strategic route. Okay, spend big. Or no, that's not a major strategic route. We reduce the speed. A lot of work to do to make the community, on board with some of that. But at a theoretical level, at least, that's what we know. I got some cross sections in there. I'm not going to jump through those. There's a lot of details in how you would actually play that out. It's not as easy as just rolling it out. You got to think about offsets. You got to think about barrier types. You got to think about end terminals, interactions, deflection areas. Providing space for vehicles that break down or need to stop, or you got to think about all road users, motorcyclists. You got to think about wildlife considerations. You got to, whole of life cost, maintenance of it, all sorts of things. Actually, I'll pause there, Marissa, and sorry to spring it on you. Was there anything that came up that I needed to deal with?
We've got a question. Why do they not use those rails to prevent them from going off path?
Barrier systems?
Slide, before just your previous.
I'm not sure which one we were talking about.
I think it was just, the barriers. I think it was this one.
Yeah. So it's a good question. It sort of goes to the core of traditional thinking in road design and management to what we need to move to contemporary thinking. And the question in itself is showing that you're thinking in a more contemporary sense, because it was all about, we will build the road with the best geometric alignment, and we'll line and mark it, and we'll give a little bit of a buffer for any mistakes. But they have to then be in control of the vehicle and make sound judgments and not fall asleep and be sober and be not distracted. And, the only way to survive this road is to generally operate absolutely perfectly for your journeys. And the barrier system and the continual barrier systems is identification of that failure and that human failure. I mean, it's going to be an interesting transition because we are still heavily reliant with the bulk of our road network on that. Like, you have to perform bloody well to survive. So how do you encourage and keep that and move that forward while we go about rectifying a hideously deficient road system through infrastructure like barriers or the serious management of speed? Big transition, big challenge. But yeah, like for this is the Hume. The Hume now, thankfully, has continuous barrier systems throughout the whole of it, of the Victorian part of it. Just like I wrote the business case on that about 10 years ago. And we started out by going, okay, well, where are the highest risk spots and where are the most people crashing? Okay, well, should we put a bit of barrier there and we'll put a little bit of barrier here? And in the end, we were just like, well, this is just ridiculous. Like the crashes are distributed throughout. None of this road aligns highly with safe system principles. It just needs barrier throughout. And then your business case centers around alignment with safe system principles. It's still a good economic investment. Road safety is always pretty much a good economic investment, far better than building a new stadium or tunnel or pretty much anything. But that's a whole different ballgame. So yes, barrier systems, great. Just a last little example, and then I'll get Marissa to take you through your assignment, which won't take you long, by the way. I like, again, people thinking about energy management. Can we do anything to lessen energy transfer? This is a crash that happened in Mildura in Victoria, where a old Ford hit a power pole. I think the speed was, in the forensic crash investigation, was something like 93 kilometers an hour. I'm pretty sure you know the scenario. It was 2 a.m. It's full of young males. Okay. So they hit the power pole, but the power pole happened to have one of these things on it, which is called a Raptor cushion. Now, a Raptor cushion operates by saying, well, can we manage some of the energy here? And it's not just like a cushion where, like a football goalpost padding. It actually rotates a bit and it tries to move the energy away from the pole. So as the vehicle hits it, tries to move it, it crumples as well. And interestingly, that one had a 93-kilometer crash in a vehicle with 0 stars in terms of safety under today's test protocols. That those 4 passengers only sustained minor injuries and are all, have all survived that. That's pretty outstanding. And it's thinking about managing that energy. All right, we need to do lots of work on lessening the number of people in those scenarios and getting in that car and all of those behavioral challenges. But we need to work on making our infrastructure more energy absorbing so we lessen severity, because incidents will occur. There might be another quiz. What? I can't even remember what the other quiz is, Marissa. We may not.
The other poll?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can tell you it's on sealed shoulders.
Oh, yeah. Chuck it up. Let's see. And then
That's
I'm
all
going
right.
to get you to show people where the
Sure. All right. That should be up on the screen.
true
or false?
Sealed shoulders improve road safety. Interesting. True, false, or unintelligible question again.
And while people popping in their answers there, can Raptor cushions an improvement on frangible light poles?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a prize-worthy question, I think. So the you wouldn't use both. So you use a Raptor cushion where you can't put a frangible pole in. So you wouldn't put a Raptor cushion on a frangible pole because the frangible pole is meant to break away on impact. So usually it's those fixed poles that get the Raptor cushion. I would prefer slip-based frangible light poles if I can get them. Raptors aren't quite as good, but I think that there's something. All right, 3, 2, 1, end that poll. True. Yep. I mean, sealed shoulders are lessen the likelihood of crashes. Again, I'm not saying that things that only address the likelihood of crashes are bad. I'm saying they're good, they're road safety, but sealing the shoulders isn't going to eliminate our death and serious injury. We need some more to that, the barrier system as well. Unintelligible question, yeah, you can argue that as well because I didn't give you too much context on that, but most context, sealed shoulders improve things. Occasionally, we need to, and Michael's into asking, well, what width of seal? And that would add to, the scale of improvement that you would likely get. So that's a fair question. Okay. I reckon that's probably it from me. Your key points are in your PDFs that you can read if you want to look back on it. And let's give you a little assignment. So Marissa, you can be the mean one who gives them work to do after this.
I see the bag going. Let's go. All right, that coming through all right. I've just logged on to our learning management system, which hopefully you're all familiar with now. Just popping into module 2, we have a bunch of resources popped in there for you, lots of which Ken has referred to or spoken about, or lots on roundabouts and so on. So please feel free to browse them and view and download any of which you would like. Once again, we've got the module 2 presentation, which you can refer back to. We've got another quiz for today's module, just another, 5 to 10 minute quiz with a bunch of multiple choice questions. So please jump in and have an attempt at that one. There's another task that we'll need you to do. And we do have a little assignment here for you. So just here under tasks, we've got a safe system assignment. We've got, I'll get Ken to run through the assignment and then I'll run through some of the logistics here. So we've just got a PDF attachment here, assignment, which I'll open up. Yeah, all right. Ken, if you want to run through the particulars and then I'll, run through the rest.
Okay, so there's detailed instructions there for you. You can just follow that. But you see there, you're going to type your name in so we know whose assignment this is. And there we go, Marissa. And then you're going to have picked an intersection. Now, this could be an intersection near your home. This could be an intersection you remember from a holiday. This could be an intersection you've always disliked or the like. But we want you to put a Street View link or the coordinates of it. So you're not going to need to go to this intersection for this exercise. You can do this all from your desktop and Street View and things like that. But we want you to put the link in there so our markers can dive in and have a look as well. Okay. Let's go down further to the page where the actual meat of the assignment is. And you'll see we've got 3 columns. We've got exposure and likelihood and severity. What we're doing here is testing, do you understand what exposure is, what likelihood, and what severity is? That is what this assignment's purpose is. So what we get you to do is start by looking at your intersection, either via Street View or looking at your window and looking at your intersection and say, well, what's influencing the exposure to crashes at this intersection? And remember, when I talk exposure, I'm thinking numbers. What's influencing the number of drivers going through here, the number of pedestrians crossing, the number of cyclists? And it could be anything from just the number of lanes, the fact that it's on a major thoroughfare, the fact that it connects the shopping centre to the bus interchange, and so your pedestrians are going to be influenced, the exposure of pedestrians, whatever it is. So that's give us 1 to 3 things that influence exposure, okay? Then go over to likelihood and go, okay, what things in this infrastructure are influencing the chance people will crash? The likelihood. Now, this could be speeds people go through. It could be sightline impediments. It could be confusing signage. It could be line marking. It could be poorly lit. It could be, surface issues. All of these things, likelihood of crashes. So give us 1 to 3 of those. And then go to severity and say, these things influence the severity of crashes. Now, severity, remember, we don't have too many things that we can play with there. Speeds, angles, vulnerability of road users, and those sort of things. So once you've done that, then we want you to go and say, well, what could I change that would influence the exposure to crashes at this intersection? Just give us one thing. And you can write 10 things. Whoever's marking it will only read the first one. So you'd be sort of wasting your time there. Just one thing that could change the exposure to crashes. So this essentially is saying, what can you change to change the volume of vehicles or the volume of pedestrians or the like, or completely separate them from being involved or conflict points, essentially. Then do the same. What one thing could you change that would lessen the likelihood of crashes? And what's one thing you could change that would lessen the severity of crashes? So our markers are going to go and look at these and say, does this person know what exposure is, what likelihood is, and what severity is? That is going to be how you will be marked on this. It's categorization. Okay. They'll probably make a few notes if on your intersection if they see something in particular, but you're not going to get marked down if you say something that isn't absolutely feasible or the like, as long as you categorize it right. Then you're going to hit save on that.
Yeah.
And back to you, Marissa.
Yeah. So that form, that PDF that we just showed, that is fillable. So you can just, pop your answers into the fields there. So yeah, save that. It should save as the PDF. And then we want you to upload it. So we jump back into, sure, that's not letting me make a submission actually.
Are you in?
Right.
Yeah,
I am in student, but I'm not sure. I'd have to sort of, sorry about that. All right, so back into module 2. So if you click into Safe System module 2 assignment, there will be not sure why it's not coming up right now, but there will be a little submit button. So you can just click on the submit button. And I'm sorry it's not appearing for me right now. I'll have to check the settings in the background. But there is just a submit button. Press submit, upload your document, into the system. Press save, and then that will send us a notification that you've submitted that. Just a bit of a note to participants from the Transport for New South Wales. You have a brilliant firewall that does not like us, our learning management system at all. So unfortunately, participants from your organisation, they do struggle to upload any documents. So if you do encounter that issue, please just email it through to us at training@safesystemsolutions.com.au. So yeah, that's anyone from training, from Transport for New South Wales, or anyone else for that matter. If you do have any issues uploading that, please just let us know and we can upload it for you. That's not a problem. Due date, we've got a due date for this one. The due date for this will be Tuesday, the 5th. So I think that's our next, that'll be module, what are we on? Module 2, module 3. So it'll be day of module 3. So we do ask if you could complete that. And I don't think, how long should it take them, Ken?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Yeah, quick one.
Yeah,
Good.
it should be. Now, somebody's asked, can you do it as a team? Well, no, we have individual assignment requirements. However, so just pick 2 different intersections. You can definitely talk to people, what do you think about this, and have that chat. Just do your own intersection.
I think that's about it for now. We've given you a bit of time at the end of the session. You can complete your quiz, get started on that assignment if you like. I'll have a look at the settings in the background and find out why that submit button's not there, but I'll make sure that that's appearing. No problem.
Yeah, as long as everybody else has it, it's pretty easy to use.
Yeah.
Great. Well, of course, as usual, if you do have any questions, email training@safesystemsolutions.com.au, and they will help you. If you're sitting there going, feeling nervous about this, concern, really don't understand it, you feel you don't understand it, just email through. We'll organise one of the markers to have a chat with you before you get in, just to make sure you understand exactly what you're doing. Otherwise, do that quiz, do the assignment, and we'll get back into it next time. And in fact, we'll probably pick somebody, see if they have a volunteer who wants to talk through their analysis of their intersection.
And I think I might have just fixed that up now. So I'll just see if that's, ignore me. That's all right. I'll work it out.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.